What's happening, everybody? Steve Metrics here of Db8 Sports with your boy.
DJ TRIGGS.
And boom, today we are live, and it is a Monday, December 18th, 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. And we are here. It is week number, I want to say 1-5. Yeah, it's week number 15 in the NFL. Crazy how fast that NFL season goes by, Triggs.
Oh, yeah, it's been insane for a lot of teams, and not our teams very much.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. I mean, I felt like my team had an insane Thursday night, so I'm pretty stoked about that. Geeked up, ready to go to take on the Chiefs next Monday night. So I'm pretty excited about that. But I watched the Packers game early this morning, and man, I was bummed out about how that game developed. I mean, I like what I'm seeing out of Jordan Love, but it felt like there were other aspects of the team that kind of felt like they let themselves down against Tampa.
Yeah, I guess I can talk about this game. I still feel hurt on the inside. Yeah. Oh, where do we start? So Aaron Jones was basically racking up good yardage, and
He
then
looked
they were
good.
like, "Yeah, we're not gonna use him anymore." Which I guess he was on a pitch count.
Right. He's
So
still banged up a little bit.
that's fine. But you could definitely tell the difference with Aaron Jones and
Yes.
AJ Dillon. Like
Yes. Oh,
night
night and
and day.
day. Night and
Uh,
day. He is a totally different player.
yeah. And then of course, like I heard them saying on the broadcast a bunch that they were playing shell and, too high safety and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, if you're just getting ripped up on defense, at some point you have to change something. And
Right.
clearly that was not the case. Like, the disappointment's hitting now that I'm like thinking about it.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield had a perfect quarterback rating.
Yeah, and it's a lot of yak. It is not a lot of like deep passes, him cutting you guys to shred. It was a lot of the scheme, a lot of how were they running Mike Evans, a little bit of Kate Otten, and a good amount of Chris Godwin. But it just didn't feel like it was that difficult to defend against. It just seemed like the guys could not figure out a way to scheme up against it.
Yeah, and I mean it was all coaching. It was like literally they just kept saying it during the broadcast, and like you could see it. The corners were like 5-6 yards deep, and then like Mike Evans or Chris Godwin would literally like stop right in front of the guy and just catch the ball, and then it was like, oh, now we missed this tackle and he's gone.
Gotcha.
And like, I mean, besides Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, I'm just looking at it. Their longs were 25 yards. So it wasn't even like
much.
They were getting big like gains. They were literally just catching the ball over and over and over again.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the MO of Rachaad White as well. And he's very accomplished at doing that kind of thing. So it just doesn't feel like it's that scary of an offense. And to me, this is where that quarterback rating, to me, is not the most significant way to actually gauge a quarterback. It was a lot of dinking and doinking. When it came to like true quarterback play, like, yeah, Jordan Love made some awesome throws, man. Like really awesome throws. The throw to Jaden Reed at the corner of the end zone, that's mind-blowing, man. That is one of the best throws I think I've even seen. So that's where I think this is all a little bit skewed, and also the amount of pressure that Jordan Love was dealing with. I thought the offensive line played very poorly as well. But just it totally felt like it was a scheme kind of thing. And the whole dink and doink of Rachaad White, and that's Baker Mayfield's MO. He is not a guy who's going to torch you downfield. He's going to dink and doink around the middle of the field with Rachaad White, and then every once in a while, Mike Evans going to get let loose, and that's what he did.
It was all Chris Godwin. No, it was all Chris Godwin. He had 10 catches, like
right.
55 yards. Like it was literally the corners not guarding anyone.
Yeah.
They were so far off the wide receivers. Like Mike Evans didn't do anything much. Like it literally was just Chris Godwin over and over. Like there's no way a guy should have 12 targets and catch 10 of them. That means you're not
Yeah.
guarding.
Yeah. And speaking of which, the Seahawks are playing tonight, and I can tell you from some of their games that I looked at early in the season, it was the same thing with them as well, where a certain corner would be on a player for, gosh, I don't know, 12 receptions, and he'd allow 10 of them, and that's just not a good corner when it comes down to that.
It wasn't, and the sad part, it wasn't just one corner with the Packers. Like it was literally across the board. I mean, yeah, I know, like
No Jair Alexander, right?
no. And even when he's there, like you've heard him complain multiple times about the schemes where he's not even like lined up on a guy. And then you remember he lined up on Jefferson and completely shut him down last year. And it's
Exactly.
like you have some of the best corners. Rasul Douglas was an all-pro at one point.
Yes.
Everybody loves Carrington Valentine, and like
Yes.
you're not using these guys to actually stop anyone. You have an all-pro at linebacker with Devondre Campbell. You have Rashawn Gary, who's one of the best pass rushers in the game.
Yep.
Kenny Clark is stacking up the middle. He's an all-pro.
He is.
Like you have all of these players who are really, really good, and yet this happens.
Yeah, to me, the way I look at scheming for defense in the NFL, the way I kind of look at it is that if you're playing zone, you tend to have players who are not at that capable all-pro level yet, and that's kind of why you use a zone scheme to kind of get up to speed and kind of mask some of your weaknesses. But I think if you got the guys, you want to play man as much as possible.
But they were playing man. They were just playing really, really far off. It was like they didn't want them to beat them over the top, but then they weren't guarding the short stuff. And like you said, Baker Mayfield is like a short king, quote unquote, like
literally,
where he's all about short passes, and he makes that happen. And it's like I talk about this every week where the Packers get shredded on the run. Well, guess what? They stopped the run this week.
Yep.
And then they get shredded on the pass, which they're one of the top pass defenses in the league. So that didn't make any sense to me at all.
No, it didn't. And I think the thing is, too, I mean, when you shut down the pass, it's against those quarterbacks who like to throw it deep. This is one of those scenarios where the guy likes to throw it short and make everything happen with the yards after catch.
But like I said, even before, there was no yards after the catch. They just caught the ball, got dropped, and then it was over. And it was like I said, Chris Godwin, his long was 25. Mike Evans, his long was 19.
Yep.
Cade Ottman, his long was 22. Like they weren't very deep passes. They just kept lighting them up short.
Exactly. So yeah. I don't know. Like it feels like lately there's been things going on defensively that haven't been up to par with what we've typically been seeing out of that secondary between this Buccaneers game and the Giants game. It's just kind of odd seeing Green Bay kind of falter like this. So
right, and it's so crazy. They're doing everything correctly. Like they were really good on third down. They don't turn the ball over. Like their red zone was pretty solid. And then like they have games like this where it's like, wow, is someone trying to purposely lose? Or like I just don't get it. Because Jordan Love had a great game. Aaron Jones had a solid game. Like they were playing
Jaden
with
Reed
literally
looked real good too.
Yeah, they were playing with literally like third and fourth receivers out there just lighting up Tampa Bay, but we couldn't stop a cold.
Exactly. So Yeah, that's pretty much what it feels like. And I mean, Green Bay's still got a very soft schedule the rest of the way out. It looks doable, but boy, when you got 8 losses, that's rough. I mean, I think you're pretty much trying to get in, but you're going to need some help at this point. I didn't see Green Bay losing a game to Tampa and New York. I honestly didn't see them losing to either. So I think at this point it's looking rough to get in. I mean, you could go 3-0 and still kind of get edged out on breakers, but I mean it's not the AFC, so it's possible. But boy, I just didn't think that this would happen with as soft of a looking schedule the rest of the way out.
Well, I mean, yeah, I've been trying to like convince myself all day. Like at least we play Minnesota. So if we went out and we beat Minnesota,
You
then
win that breaker.
we would at least pass them.
Yep.
So there, so Minnesota is the 6th seed right now, so they would be out, and
Sure.
then we basically have to hope that other teams lose.
Gotcha. So so it's pretty much still kind of neck and neck between Green Bay, Seattle, and LA, correct?
So LA and Minnesota have 7 wins. Seattle, Atlanta, and Green Bay all have 6. And
Okay.
out of those teams, 2 of them get in.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's gonna be tight. It's gonna take having to win out plus a little bit of help.
But remember, so the Packers play Minnesota. So if they
Yes.
beat them, and I believe if I'm looking at the tiebreakers here,
But they lost the breaker against LA, correct?
Green Bay has a better conference record than Minnesota.
Okay.
Green Bay beat LA. They
Sure.
beat the Rams.
Okay.
20-3. So they have the head-to-head over them.
Sure.
Atlanta's the only one that has the tiebreaker over them.
Okay. Yeah, and I think Atlanta is either going to make a push for their own division, or I don't see them getting in at all. That division is really, really rough at this point. So
Yeah. Atlanta's 1 game back behind Tampa Bay, and I think Tampa Bay has the tiebreaker over them. Or no,
correct.
yeah, they have the tiebreaker over New Orleans. So
Okay.
basically, if Green Bay wins out, they should be in.
Okay. That's fair. Gotcha. Cool. Well, speaking of Seattle, a little bit of Monday Night Football news. There's definitely been some chatter about each quarterback being able to go between the Eagles and the Seahawks. And a little while ago, I was seeing a little bit of the warm-ups before the game. Looks like Drew Lock is definitely the guy going for tonight. So,
yeah,
little tidbit on that. We'll see if that works. To me, it seems like Drew Lock does have pretty good chemistry with those receivers up there in Seattle. And even going back to when Geno Smith began his run at QB, Drew Lock pretty much was the starter of that team until he came down with COVID, and then Geno just kind of went on his run and just never looked back. So I think either if it's Drew Lock or Geno Smith, the receivers of that team are in fairly good hands.
Well, I heard this morning that Drew Lock was more than likely going to start.
Yep.
And hey, hopefully the Eagles are trying to win, and that would actually help the Packers.
Right.
At least knock Seattle down a peg.
It would. It certainly would.
So that would be a positive.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
besides that, it would. I don't know. The entire NFC is San Francisco and everybody else.
It is pretty much that. And speaking of San Francisco, and speaking of players and teams that we think are really looking good, and how the MVP race is kind of developing, I got a little bit of a graphic for that, and kind of how some of these players are shaping up, how some of these odds are looking. This is brought to you guys by Covers, pretty good site I like going to, whether it's looking up injuries, spreads, all sorts of stuff. Covers is pretty good at that kind of stuff. And this is right now your odds-on favorites for the top 5 guys to win MVP. Right below CMC at the bottom there, you also have Patrick Mahomes and Tua Tagovailoa. I'm not too hot on either of those guys, but they're on this list. So I throw it to you, Triggs. At this point, who do you like, or who do you see having a real strong chance to play themselves up for the rest of the season to win MVP?
I mean, they basically have the graphic correct.
Sure.
Like Dak Prescott's having a really good season.
Yep.
I just don't think that his yards stack up with Brock Purdy.
Right.
And then Lamar's having a really good season, which could I said it at the beginning of the season that he was my MVP. And he could really sneak in. Let's say San Francisco loses the game and Brock Purdy doesn't look very good.
Yep.
Lamar could sneak in at number 1, especially how, most of these MVPs and stuff like that are based on your record and how good you are in your division, all that stuff.
Yep.
Which is why I don't think Dak will win it, just because he probably won't win his own division. That game yesterday really left a sour taste in people's mouths in the media.
Yep, and that game is in prime time as well. So when you're under the lights and they see you play, that doesn't look so hot. And speaking of that, I got a counter to one of these players on this list as well, who also kind of showed up in prime time. Actually, the Bills Cowboys. I think that was a late afternoon game on Fox. And then we had later in the night, we had Jacksonville and Baltimore. And for me, I got to take Lamar out of this. I know people say he's been having a great season, but you play against Jacksonville, which is a terrible secondary, and you pretty much only complete 5 passes. Like, yeah, he runs for 100 yards, and he runs, but that is not a good-looking day from a quarterback standard, especially one that is valuable and a MVP. I can't give most valuable player to a guy who only completes 5 passes at the quarterback position in a game against one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And on top of that, this is twice now I've watched Ravens games and I've fallen asleep both times watching Ravens games because they are terribly boring. I don't get what Lamar Jackson does at quarterback that's wowing people this season, because it is completely unlike how he wowed them the season he actually won MVP.
I can see where you're coming from with that. This is my only argument for Lamar Jackson. Again, record, and he's top 20 in passing and top 20 in rushing. He's got 700 yards on the ground, which is pretty ridiculous. I mean, I think let me check here. Yeah, he's 18th in rushing yards. So, he's basically better than half of the starting running backs in the NFL. So,
but it's yards, and it's not touchdowns.
No, just yards.
Right.
But then again, you have to add his passing yards, or his passing touchdowns, and his rushing touchdowns.
Yep.
And the only person getting close to that would be Raheem Mostert or CMC, and I just don't see them giving it to a running back. I would say, to be honest, CMC deserves it more than any quarterback up there. His odds are nuts.
They are.
Putting money on him would probably be a good idea.
I actually did that last Wednesday.
Nice.
I put $40 on Christian McCaffrey to win MVP. If he wins MVP, I win $1,040.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty smart bet.
It's very low risk investment, and it could hit.
Right. And like with Purdy, he leads the league in touchdowns, yards, average. Like his touchdown interception ratio is the best. So like, and I think his QBR is higher than everyone else's too. But I don't know about his passer rating, but
Right.
I didn't actually check that. No,
I think your argument about how it's not really looking like it's going to be a quarterback is going to pan out. And I put this up there too because I think these books really kind of have the inside scoop as to what's going on. They're very smart. They know how to make money. And I think too, the people that vote on this, they're looking at the San Francisco 49ers. They're dissecting them just like we are, just like all analysts are looking at the NFL. And when you look at San Francisco, flat out, the best weapon on their team that is the most terrifying thing to scheme against is Christian McCaffrey. On top of that, the 3 games where there was no Debo, no Christian McCaffrey or George Kittle, those games were where Brock Purdy really struggled a lot and had some of his worst games of the season. So I think those games still leave a salty taste in people's mouths, as well as even Tyreek Hill, who, yeah, he's hurt, but Tyreek Hill also lost a game by giving the ball up to the Kansas City Chiefs, who took it to the house and ended up winning that game because of that play. So I think when your MVP leaves the image in your mind of this is what this player actually did to lose a football game, it comes back against you. Maybe even the game last night, like you pointed out with Dak Prescott, scoring very few points, being up there for MVP, playing so drastically different on the road as, say, at home. I think that really leaves a sour taste in people's mouths.
Right. Now, I did just kind of like peek through some stats here.
Sure.
So Christian McCaffrey is like, he's having a great season on the ground. I mean, he's got 300 more yards than the next closest guy, which is James Cook with Buffalo.
Yeah.
But like, he's not catching the ball as much as I thought he was. I thought he would have had like, gigantic receiving yards, but he's only got 500. And for some reason, I was thinking he had like 600, 700, 800.
Right.
And he's got 7 touchdowns, which is top 10 in the league for receiving wise.
Right.
But like, yeah, I don't know. Now I'm kind of like, I'm a little skeptical now.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 7 receiving touchdowns on the year.
Yeah.
Looking at the rushing touchdowns, 13. I'm already seeing 7 to start the season, and then I'm seeing another
he's got
13
on the ground.
Yeah, 13 on the ground. So combined, he has 20 touchdowns on the year. That is pretty impressive.
It is. Don't get me wrong. The touchdowns are, but like when you compare that to like let me go to someone that's close here. Like Raheem Mostert, he also has 20 touchdowns.
Wow.
And
that's cool.
He's got 18 on the ground.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And he's only got 200 receiving yards for 2 touchdowns. So like when you stack Christian McCaffrey up to like a Raheem Mostert, it actually doesn't look that like crazy.
Yeah, but I think it's split. I mean, I think Raheem is one of those guys that is more ground dependent on how he does things. When it comes to the air, they thrive off of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and even some of their tight ends. That's kind of how they work that offense. They really don't like throwing the ball to their running backs in Miami. Right. It's kind of weird. It's just what it is. I think last year when it was more of Jeff Wilson, I think they liked to throw it to him every now and then. But Mostert is really he's a firecracker. He just explodes out of the backfield, and it's awesome. It's so fun to watch. To me, I compare him to Bijan Robinson in a way with that explosiveness out of the backfield. Kind of a bummer we haven't seen more of Bijan this season. But just that power that they run with is really, really cool. I think it's just it's a difference in the kind of player. Christian McCaffrey is going to have more receiving production than a Raheem Mostert. He's just a guy who can play everything. I mean, even Christian McCaffrey's brother, I think, actually played receiver for the Green Bay Packers for a little bit. It's very interesting to just see how he plays outside and kind of how he can run the ball for power too. And I think over the last couple of years, between last season and especially this season, he is running with a head full of steam now with the San Francisco 49ers, and it is a ton of fun to watch. But man, just looking at his production, it's always like, I want to say every single week, it's almost been 100 yards combined with at least one touchdown per game. It's that to me, that's pretty remarkable. And for me, if he continues this pace, and he will definitely have a hard test next week against Baltimore, and even Washington can be a sneaky defense here and there. If he can just keep his production moving against the Baltimore, against the Washington, and then kind of clean up against the Rams like we saw Joe Mixon do early in the season, I think if he does that, he will absolutely have a strong shot at MVP. But he has to check off all three of those games.
Yeah, and that's kind of where, like,
it's hard.
Where, yeah, it gets tough because, like, Baltimore has San Francisco, Miami, and Pittsburgh, and then San Francisco has Baltimore, Washington, and the Rams. Yep. And to me, this Monday, this Monday game coming up is gonna be the, like, I think it might be the MVP deciding factor.
It's like, the MVP Bowl. It's the MVP Super Bowl.
Yep. Because let's say Christian McCaffrey goes in there and runs for like 150, catches like 50, gets 2 touchdowns, and that's the game. Where yes. Brock Purdy only throws 1 touchdown, but they end up winning, let's say 17-10 or something low, right? Then Christian McCaffrey shoots up to number 1.
He does.
If Brock Purdy goes out there and throws 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, and McCaffrey only gets 60 yards on the ground and like 45 in the air, well, Brock Purdy's going to stay way above McCaffrey. And then that vice versa, if Lamar goes out there and just rips it up, and in the next 3 weeks he gets 1,000 yards on the ground, Lamar Jackson shoots to number 1.
So honestly, I think your third and your first option, I think, are true. I think those are what will happen. I disagree with the second thing you pointed out with Brock Purdy tearing it up against the Ravens secondary. That secondary is terrifying.
No. Oh. I don't think. No, I'm just saying that would be his way of staying atop.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Like, he has to go out there and shut it down. Absolutely.
Yes. Yep. But I do kind of feel like the third point you pointed out with how Lamar Jackson is going to have to produce, and how McCaffrey, I think, honestly will be forced to produce because Baltimore's secondary is just devastating. I mean, they completely nullified Trevor Lawrence last night. Like that was very impressive with what they did. And they are one of the best defenses in the NFL. They've shown it week in, week out. But I think too, Lamar Jackson has to do what he did 2 weeks ago. The production that he had with Zay Flowers, and again, he is continuing that production at the tight end slot, whether it was Mark Andrews before he went down and now it's Isaiah Likely. If he can keep doing that with a Zay Flowers as well, or some combination of Odell Beckham and Rashad Bateman or something to that extent, just show that you can really extend plays and really make those deep passes, because he has a heck of an arm and he has these really shifty, talented route running receivers to throw it to. And then he has a big guy in Isaiah Likely. I mean, again, I wish that Lamar Jackson had a big time target to throw at, whether it be like an AJ Brown or a Devontae Adams. I think he needs that. I think he absolutely needs a receiver with size, even like Josh Allen in Buffalo. He's the same thing, in my opinion, where he has that talent of a Lamar Jackson, but he has yet to have a big time non-tight end target to throw it to. But I think it's possible. I think if Lamar can actually really demonstrate how good of a passer he is instead of just living off his legs and make things happen. And I think too, another part that's going to force it is, yes, this is a team that can run the ball extremely well, but losing the running back that they lost late in the game last night, I think that matters. I think that does change a little bit of the scheme of the offense, and I think it does force them to bring it in and get more production out of those wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, like you said, this is the MVP Bowl.
It is.
Baltimore is, I mean, both teams don't allow the run to happen, so Christian McCaffrey might have a hard time. Lamar Jackson might have a hard time. And then both teams let up 16 points a game. So it's like scoring is not going to happen very much.
Yes.
And offensively, I mean, both teams are pretty much going to – I mean, both teams can score 30 points a game. I think it's like 27 for Baltimore and 30 for San Francisco.
Yep.
So, like, the offenses can explode. They're both top 5 offenses. They're the top 2 defenses. So, like, something's got to give at some point.
Exactly. And I feel, too, with the fact that secondary of Baltimore is so good, plus the other factor of this, which is very interesting, and it's an incredible credit to how strong of a coach and a play caller that Kyle Shanahan is that the 49ers have the lowest pass attempts in the NFL. Absolute dead last. They are 32nd in pass attempts in the NFL, but they are 3rd when it comes to yardage passing in the NFL. So I think that's just a tremendous testament to the scheme and how they figure this out. But if you're not going to be throwing much against a really tough secondary against Baltimore, then I think they're going to have to attack this in a different way. They're going to have to utilize more Deebo Samuel, more Christian McCaffrey, and a sneaky receiver that I think really starts to open things up in this game against Baltimore, I think would be Jawan Jennings. I think they would have to utilize the slot a little bit more and break things down to almost like a Baker Mayfield, Rachaad White kind of level.
So going off that pass attempts, I'm glad you brought that up because that kind of caught my eye. So
yes.
Tua's number 1 in yards, right?
Yep.
Brock Purdy's 2, Goff is 3, Mahomes is 4, Prescott's 5. So this is funny. Tua's got 450 attempts. Jared Goff's got 499.
Wow.
Patrick Mahomes has 524.
Yeesh.
Prescott has 484. Brock Purdy's at 380.
Yeah. That I love.
And the crazy part is, like, his yards per throw, he's an entire yard above everybody else.
Yeah. That to me tells me that when it comes to just straight up being a better passer, I do think he probably is a better passer than almost every single player on that list. I don't know. I think maybe, boy, it's close, but I mean, I don't think he's truly like phenomenal as a quarterback on his own without Shanahan. But I do think with Shanahan, I mean, just breaking down coverages, making his progressions, making his throws downfield, I mean, he has a big arm. And to me, he plays a lot like what he was playing like when he was at Iowa State.
So here's the big kicker, though. 3 of his main weapons are in the top 25 in YAC. McCaffrey is 24, Kittle's 19, and Debo is 11. So he might not be throwing it very far, but his guys take off.
Right. And to me, that is something that with us going forward at Db8 Sports, that is definitely a metric I really want to work on, is what is the difference in YAC and the YBC, we'll call it. Because I think a quarterback that is really showing their true talent at the position is doing it more from the yards before catch. Yards before catch. And I wonder if of those guys you named off, is Tua the leader of that?
Ooh, I don't know. That's a good
It's
question.
kind of a hard stat to find. I want to say I've come across it on like maybe Pro Football Reference. I want to say it
Let me
might
see if
be
I can find it.
Yeah, it might be Pro Football Focus as well. But yards before catch to me is the one I would want to see the most of. But then again, with Tua, we're going to see a lot of that come from Tyreek Hill. I wonder what that YBC is minus Tyreek Hill.
It look at you. So it's called yards in the air or
Oh,
air yards.
I want YBC. Hey, when we do it, it's YBC. And they
Tua,
got to know your ABCs of Y.
that's funny. Tua is first. Brock Purdy is 5.
But that's still not that bad.
No, it's not, which is actually that's a lot higher than I thought it would be.
Absolutely. And the thing too, like when I think of their offense, the number one play I think about of that offense when they pass the ball, whether it's Brock Purdy or whoever at quarterback, the number one thing I always think of is George Kittle just running scot-free and no one nearby. And I hope that some of that is reflective on that YBC of Brock Purdy.
Yeah, Brock Purdy yards air yards averaged. Brock Purdy is number 1. Because I'm not going to count Jacoby Brissett because I think he only played 2 games.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like there definitely has to be a certain threshold of passes or games played on this list. I mean, you have to be a quarterback that's been there week in, week out, and it's definitely unfortunate what's happened to like Cousins and Deshaun Watson, and excuse me, hopefully CJ Stroud comes back soon. But yeah, you definitely got to be out there as much as possible to make a case truly for MVP and utilizing that metric.
Wow. So now that I'm in the rabbit hole of advanced metrics.
Yes.
Brock Purdy leads the league in 20-plus yard passes, 30-plus yard passes, 40-plus yard passes, and 50-plus yard passes. He's number 2 in 10 yards plus. Or no, he's number 4. Sorry.
Okay.
So, like, literally he is throwing deep balls. Well,
wow.
Or he's getting deep passes or deep yardage because of the guys catching the ball. But
okay,
that's insane.
That is insane. That is really, really cool. Where did you find those stats, Triggs?
Fantasypros.com.
Fantasypros.com. That is a very solid site. I actually linked a widget via Google Chrome from Fantasy Pros to our fantasy league for ESPN. They're a very, very solid site. I really like them though. That's really cool. You found that.
Yeah, I like their advanced metrics.
Yep.
They make it pretty easy to kind of navigate through.
Nice. Yeah, that is really good stuff. That's a thing there. And I mean, I think this might be true for almost every quarterback that Shanahan has outside of Kirk Cousins. It might be a thing where like these quarterbacks, once they leave the Shanahan system, they just probably don't do that great on their own. But for a guy that's actually with Shanahan, I mean, you gotta give him a lot of credit. I mean, I think the only one that we could kind of see was definitely not going to work post Shanahan was Matt Ryan, but the rest of them are looking like they're doing okay.
Yeah. So all in all, like Brock, this next game, Brock Purdy, Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, it's the MVP Bowl.
It is, and I think that MVP Bowl, I think we're gonna find at least 2 of those 3 are going to keep their momentum moving forward for the MVP. I think one of those 3 will more than likely fall out of the race after this game. I don't see it being all 3 of the 3, but yeah, we'll see. I do feel like this is something that could kind of happen with the momentum of and the thing is too, when it comes to the San Francisco defense, the one part where they definitely are susceptible is in the air. And it like you would need a team to kind of play from ahead almost to really take advantage of this. but I think a team like the Baltimore Ravens can really find some production by shutting down the offense of San Francisco, but then making things happen with either an Isaiah Likely or a Zay Flowers or whatever route runner for that receiving core tends to get open the most against that 49ers secondary. I think it's very likely that can happen in that situation.
Okay, here's my question for you before we're done with the MVP talk.
Yes.
If Lamar has 1,000 yards rushing, is he the MVP?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, I want to see more solid production, scoring touchdowns, however they come, whether it's rushing or throwing. That's what I want to see. I just want to see more production with that, as well as winning the next 3 games. If he scores touchdowns, wins the next 3 games, and you don't have this momentum coming from Christian McCaffrey, then I think it goes to him.
Interesting.
Yes.
So
for me, I'm not about the yards, because ultimately they're playing about almost 20 games a season, and he ran for 1,000. So that's over 50 yards a game. But when it comes to being a quarterback, you got to make your damage scoring the football, whether it's throwing it or running it. And that's what I want to see from Lamar.
So at this point, he has 22 touchdowns.
Okay. So he's got 22 touchdowns, and we're in 15 games. That's not looking too hot.
Brock Purdy's only got 29, and he leads. So
he does, but 30 compared to almost 20 looks better.
Yeah, I guess my point is not very many people have that many touchdowns.
True. And defenses have been playing a lot better this season than in previous years. And we also know, too, basically since Tom Brady retired, the quarterback production overall in the NFL is declining. So that is very interesting as well.
There's only 9 quarterbacks with that many touchdowns.
Yep.
So, I mean, he's top 10 in touchdowns. I know there's that gap between him and Purdy, but like he also doesn't have that many interceptions. Like he's doing okay.
Yeah, he it's not necessarily the interceptions too, but how is he on total turnovers?
Let's check.
Yeah, because I think he's also lost a few fumbles as well, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think the last thing I checked, lost was 2. 2 fumbles.
So he lost 2 fumbles. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
He actually hasn't turned over the ball that much. Like he's
okay.
He's yeah. I don't know. I can't hype him up too much more, but
yeah,
I think this game will really show us what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this game will absolutely reflect really who the MVPs are moving forward, but they also have to do with the final 2 games as well, barring any weird like playoff clinching scenarios, which that could happen for both these teams as well. I think they both have 3 losses. And that's looking pretty big at this point, to be honest.
Well, especially in the AFC, like, so Baltimore plays Miami after San Francisco. Let's just say they beat Miami, they won't play the last game. There's no need.
Yep.
They're 2 games up on Kansas City, who's 3, and they just beat Jacksonville, and they're 4.
Yep.
So they're 4 games behind. So there'd be no point.
Exactly. Yeah.
If they clinch after beating the number 1 seed in the NFC and the number 2 seed in the AFC, there's no way Lamar loses the MVP.
Yes, that's fair. That is totally fair. Yeah, I can see that happening. And in that case, if we're kind of doing MVP kind of almost like a Heisman kind of vote at that point, I don't see anyone having a problem with that.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. This whole thing's weird.
It is weird, but it's cool. And it's why from day one when we were talking like a fantasy perspective. I've been really hoping to see Christian McCaffrey win it. I was just shocked that his odds were so low. I don't know if this is the lowest his odds have been all year, but I almost remember at the start of the season, and I thought Christian McCaffrey had really, really high odds for MVP, which is why I kind of avoided it from a betting perspective. But now seeing his odds as low as 2,000, I think now they've kind of been cut in half, and they're around almost the plus 1,000, plus 1,500 range. I think people are starting to open their eyes and say, yeah, let's take a little action on it now. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think it was because if you remember last year, he was kind of bananas when he got to San Francisco, where everyone was just like, "Oh my gosh, he's going nuts. We got to pick him up." And so that's probably where his odds like went through the roof.
Yes.
Yeah, he had a combined like what 1,100 rushing yards and oh my gosh, nearly 800 receiving yards. So like last year was pretty nuts because I have to combine him, Carolina and San Francisco.
Correct. Yeah, and it was crazy how much his production was in Carolina as well. I think it was almost like 75% of that offense. It was wild.
Probably, yeah.
So,
but he got to gain more touchdowns once he went to San Francisco.
Oh, totally. Yeah, he has way more weapons that can take some of that tension off him, and you have the brilliant mind of Kyle Shanahan. So it all comes together and looks great like it does. So
did he win?
Pretty cool.
Did he win the MVP in 2019?
I don't think Christian McCaffrey has ever won MVP.
How? This dude, okay. This dude had 1,387 rushing yards, 15 touchdowns on the ground. He had 1,005 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns in the air. How is that not an MVP?
Yeah, I think that was the year too where people were talking about that. But I want to say that is the season of Aaron Rodgers. It's got to be like an Aaron Rodgers season or something. Or who else would be up there? Mahomes? I think
Lamar Jackson.
Oh, it's the Lamar Jackson year. Yeah, the Lamar Jackson MVP year was truly unique and truly spectacular. Kind of in the way that we look at Christian McCaffrey as well. I mean, we look at Christian McCaffrey having the dynamics in the receiving game and the rushing game, just like Lamar can dole it up passing and rushing. So I think that's why we're going to see this MVP race probably come down to those two guys.
Oh, my.
What you got?
Lamar had 3,100 yards passing, 36 touchdowns. He had 1,200 on the ground and 7. Yeah, there was no way.
Yeah.
CMC had a great year, but that's nuts. Those are video.
Yes. It was spectacular. And just the way he was running, the way he was moving, even his throws in the red zone are spectacular from that season. And I still think he definitely has that ability. I do want to see more of that. It's just been odd that we haven't, and they've been so run dependent. And I get it. I understand that's how that offense works. But I do want to see that if Lamar Jackson truly is MVP, you can't play against a garbage defense and complete 5 passes. Like that's ridiculous. That has to be better than that. And we have to get that to be a lot better against San Francisco, who truly is a team that can let you throw the ball, but they will stop you up front.
You're throwing me for a loop now.
I know. It's weird, man. It is really weird. I mean, I'm even watching the post game last night. That was last night against the Jaguars. They have no secondary. They're terrible in the secondary.
See, I didn't watch the Jaguars game.
I don't blame you, man. I really don't blame you. I think it was like 3 or 4 passes to Isaiah Likely, 1 pass to Odell Beckham, and 1 pass to Zay Flowers. That's it.
Man, I gotta like find out what happened here.
I think Lamar threw a passing touchdown to Isaiah Likely, and I think he may have run for a touchdown as well. But that's it. I mean, I've seen the numbers of Lamar Jackson from the game. Yeah, he had over 100 yards rushing, but the rest of it is not
Oh.
not MVP caliber in my book.
Oh, wait a minute. The Ravens had the ball 10 more minutes than Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
They rushed for 251 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but if you're running the ball for 6 yards a carry, you probably don't have to throw it. And they had the ball for 10 more minutes. Their time of possession was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's true. That is definitely true. I mean, I definitely give them that.
They had 14 rushing first downs.
Yeah.
To 6.
That will do it. I get it. It to me, just seeing it from the quarterback standpoint, though, it's to me, I'm still not as impressed.
It was he completed 14 passes.
14 passes. Hold up, is that? I gotta see that.
Yeah,
because somehow I was seeing only
it was 14 out of 24. Yeah,
really.
And he had 97 yards on the ground. He carried it 12 times.
Okay. Well, that's a lot better than whatever I was looking at.
Yeah, that's why I was like, wait, what? Oh, wait, yeah. You're talking about Josh Allen.
Oh, really?
Yep, it's Josh Allen. Because I was going to say, there wasn't 2 games like that, was it? No. Josh Allen only completed like 5 passes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I was looking. Oh,
7.
My bad.
Josh Allen completed 7 passes for 94 yards.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I either saw that or something else, but yeah, I definitely had the wrong stat line then. So yeah, 14 passes. Yeah, that lines up to like what you're saying, where you have more time of possession. At that point, you really don't need to run it much. And okay, completing 14 of 24 passes, not the greatest passing percentage, but I mean, to me, that's where like I look at this and I'm like, okay, cool. So he ran for 1 touchdown, if I'm right on this. So he passed for a touchdown, ran for about 100 yards. I'm not seeing that he threw. That is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that he threw for a touchdown, ran for 100 yards, and I'm not seeing that he ran for a touchdown. And I'm also seeing 1 interception.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So 100 yards. I mean, we look at this almost with Lamar, like we have to look at this from like a fantasy perspective. 100 yards rushing, 1 touchdown throwing, 1 interception, and less than 200 yards. Ugh. That is it to me. That's just not.
If you combine it, it's 270. So it's still pretty solid.
Yeah, that's solid then. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean 270 total. Yeah.
Because compare it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, still for me,
Trevor
like
Lawrence, who threw the ball 43 times, and he had about 300 total yards and 1 touchdown.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, we can say Trevor Lawrence has had a lot of games where he has just stunk, and Trevor Lawrence is much. We feel like he's got more of that talent, but he's clearly not showing it. So I certainly have Lamar Jackson, even just a player overall, way ahead of Trevor Lawrence. And boy, does it suck to say that, because I thought Trevor Lawrence was going to be more of an elite level quarterback, but he's just not showing it. Whereas Lamar is.
Well, this might surprise you. Lamar's top 10 in pass completion percentage. So, I mean, he's not having a bad season.
Yeah, true. He's not having a bad season, but you need to have a truly great season to be MVP. And I think if he shows that the last two games of the season, because I feel what you say is exactly right. That if they win against San Francisco, win against Miami, they shut it down. They absolutely shut it down. So if he has two back-to-back great games against two of the top teams in the NFL, that absolutely will do it.
True story.
Yep. So there we go. I think we got a great content for tonight. I think we're looking pretty good for a show, Triggs. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
I think it's pretty good. Pretty
Lamar
good
gets
MVP
sacked
discussion.
a lot. His offensive line is horrible.
I've been saying that as well too. I think they have a great run blocking, but bad pass protection, and they showed that last season as well.
Yeah,
I still think that's got to be something they have to clean up.
1, 2, 3, 4. He's 7th in sacks. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, and for a guy that you really gave him that big money quarterback contract, then if we're giving that to a guy like him, we have to secure that offensive line and give him that protection that he needs because he can only take those hits for so long before that's it.
Right.
And then it's Cam Newton.
Oh boy, don't say that.
Yeah, we don't want that, man. We don't want that for him. We don't want that for Josh Allen. Happened to Ben Roethlisberger as well. So yeah, so there we go. Thank you, James. So with that, what video game you got today, pal?
I don't know. My whole life is ruined right now.
Oh no. That's not good.
Oh, here we go. I have no. So I was kidding. Totally kidding. Oh, there it is. Oh, my bad. I'm throwing stuff.
There we
go. Flip it. So I have no idea what this game is.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I remember when my dad bought me this game.
Sure.
Basically, it is called Dual Heroes.
Well, there's got to be two of them, right? I would think you would just.
There's not. Nope.
Oh.
Barely.
Well, that's false advertising. Huh.
Yeah. So basically, it's a really, really, really bad fighting game where like you just have robots just fighting each other.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's
so bad.
Okay. Bummer. I was expecting this to be like some kind of like partner, like Batman Robin kind of thing, like at all times kind of video game. Oh well. Huh. Well, for the belt,
that would have been cool. I mean, that would have been probably cool. Played it more.
Exactly. I was kind of figuring, like the guy kind of looked like a Spider-Man or whatever Ryan Reynolds character is that I'm blanking on, whatever that guy is. But whatever. Anyways, my belt is Marvin the Martian. I like going green. I will have a new green belt for tomorrow. So that's what we got. That's no debate. There you go, guys. So I think we're looking pretty darn good for a show. So just want to let people know, same time tomorrow, guys. You'll see us back here, 7:00 Central, Facebook, Twitter, X, YouTube. You'll get us here. You can find us on all our platforms underneath. And for that, I'm Steve Metrics. That's your boy. That's your boy,
TRIGGS.
DJ TRIGGS. And that's no debate.